What if I told you some families were so rich, they could buy entire countries? We're not talking about your average billionaires. These are dynasties that controlled empires, ran industries, and in some cases owned half the world. Here are the top 10 richest families of all time. And number 1 is so loaded, Jeff Bezos would be their butler. Number 10, the Vanderbilt family, net worth $185 billion. They called him the Commodore. And no, not the guy from your dad's yacht club. Cornelius Vanderbilt turned a Staten Island ferry boat into one of the largest fortunes America had ever seen. How? Railroads, lots of them. By the late 1800s, he owned so much railroad track, he could have played real-life Monopoly and still had pieces left over. At their peak, the Vanderbilts were so filthy rich, they didn't just build mansions. They built palatial estates with 150-plus rooms, private art galleries, and enough marble to make Rome jealous. You know that show Downton Abbey? That was a starter home compared to what the Vanderbilts were living in. But here's where it gets wild. Despite all that cash, just 3 generations later, the fortune evaporated. Lavish parties, reckless spending, and no one running the business empire turned America's richest family into a cautionary tale. At a 1973 family reunion, not a single Vanderbilt was a millionaire. Number 9, the Medici family, net worth $200 billion. Italy's answer to what if a family controlled God, money, and art all at once. These guys were the original influencers, except instead of selfies, they literally shaped the Renaissance. Starting as bankers in 15th century Florence, they invented the double-entry bookkeeping system, boring but genius, and quickly turned into the Goldman Sachs of the Renaissance. They funded kings, queens, popes, and practically ran the Catholic Church behind the scenes. 4 Medici family members became popes. That's not influence, that's divine monopoly. But they weren't just rich, they were cultural tastemakers. Ever heard of Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Botticelli? Thank the Medicis. They were basically the world's most powerful Patreon account. Number 8, the Walton family, net worth $250 billion. You've been in their empire. In fact, you probably bought batteries, a frozen pizza, and a pool noodle from it last week. The Waltons are the family behind Walmart, and every time a yellow rollback sign pops up, they get a little richer. Sam Walton opened his first store in 1962. Today, over 10,500 stores in 24 countries. The Walton family owns more than 50% of the company and their personal bank accounts. Let's just say each sibling could buy a small country and still afford private jets for their dogs. Here's the mind blower. They earn over $4 million per hour. While you're watching this video, they just made enough money to retire, again, every single second. The Waltons didn't build an empire on swords or silver. They did it with savings, efficiency, and aisle 7. Number 7, the House of Saud. Net worth $1.4 trillion. Oil, dessert, royal palaces. Welcome to the House of Saud, a royal family with liquid gold pumping through their veins. Since founding Saudi Arabia in 1932, this family has had a monopoly on one of the most valuable commodities on earth, oil. Their power doesn't come from conquest, it comes from controlling the tap. When the Saudis speak, oil prices move. That means entire economies hang on their decisions. As of today, they rake in over $300 billion a year, with 13,000 members in the royal family. Yes, you heard that right, 13,000. They own everything from football teams to islands to private jets with gold seatbelts. Prince Al-Walid once bought a diamond-studded license plate just because he could. Number 6, the Rothschild family. Net worth $400 billion to over $1 trillion. If money had a secret society, the Rothschilds would be the founding members. Originating in 18th century Germany, Amschel Rothschild set up his sons in 5 different financial capitals across Europe. Each one ran a bank, and together they created the first true international banking system. They didn't just lend money, they financed nations. Need to fund a war? Ask a Rothschild. Need to stabilize a collapsing economy? Rothschild. Need to crush Napoleon? Guess who helped finance the opposition? By the 1800s, they were so rich they could literally cause markets to crash just by whispering rumors. Their wealth was kept quiet, their movements discreet, and their power practically invisible, which only fueled the legend. Number 5, the Fugger family, net worth $400 billion. Let's get one thing straight. His name was Jacob Fugger, and he was not messing around. Known as Jacob the Rich, he was the wealthiest man in the world during the early 1500s, and possibly the richest individual ever. He started by trading textiles, but soon expanded into mining, banking, and lending to emperors. He had so much financial leverage, he literally bought votes to make his favorite candidate, Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor. That's right, he didn't just influence politics, he rigged an election centuries before the internet even existed. His family created one of Europe's most powerful banking empires, rivaling the Medicis. And like a boss, Jakob also built the world's first social housing complex, which incredibly is still in use today in Germany. Number 4. The Imperial House of Habsburg peak. Wealth, immeasurable but empire-spanning. For nearly 600 years, Habsburg dynasty ruled vast stretches of Europe. We're talking Austria, Spain, Hungary, Bohemia, the Netherlands, parts of Italy, and even the New World. You couldn't throw a crown without hitting a Habsburg heir. But how'd they do it? Simple: marriage diplomacy. Their motto might as well have been, why fight wars when you can marry into empires? They strategically married off sons and daughters until they practically absorbed Europe by in-laws alone. Seriously, one Habsburg wedding could change the map. They didn't just have gold, they minted it. They owned entire mines, fleets and armies, and their imperial treasury was filled with enough jewels to shame a Bond villain. And their influence? Let's just say, if Game of Thrones had a real-life version, the Habsburgs were the Lannisters, Targaryens, and Tyrells combined. Number 3. The Mughal dynasty. Net worth $2.2 trillion. Imagine ruling a land so wealthy, your throne is literally encrusted with diamonds the size of eggs. Welcome to the Mughal Empire, where power and opulence reached a level modern billionaires can only dream about. Founded in 1526 by Babur, a descendant of Genghis Khan and Timur, the Mughals ruled over an empire that spanned almost the entire Indian subcontinent. And it wasn't just big, it was blazing with wealth. At their peak, the Mughals controlled 25% of the world's GDP. That's more than the entire economy of the United States today. But beyond the bling, they had world-class administration, trade networks that stretched from Europe to China, and innovations in architecture and weaponry. Their decline came with British colonization, internal conflict, and, well, spending like there was no tomorrow. But while their empire crumbled, their aesthetic and legacy left a permanent mark on history. Number 2. The Romanov family. Net worth $300 billion to $1 trillion. When it comes to royal extravagance, no one did it like the Romanovs. For over 300 years, they ruled Russia with an iron scepter and a golden crown, living in icy palaces where chandeliers dripped diamonds and banquets lasted for days. Tsar Nicholas II, the last Romanov emperor, reportedly had more personal wealth than any monarch in history. The family controlled nearly all of Russia's land, forests, industries, and gold reserves. How rich were they? Let's just say when Nicholas hosted royal balls, the floor was sometimes made of silver coins, just for decoration. And then came 1917, the Russian Revolution. The family was overthrown, imprisoned, and ultimately executed in a basement by Bolsheviks. Their vast treasures, seized, hidden, or lost. To this day, historians and treasure hunters believe billions in Romanov gold is still missing. Number 1. The Genghis Khan family. Estimated wealth, $120 trillion. Let's be clear, this is not a typo. If you adjusted the value of everything the Mongol Empire controlled at its peak, the Khan family's net worth would be roughly $120 trillion. Yes, trillion. With a T. Genghis Khan, the man himself started out as a tribal orphan, betrayed, exiled, and nearly starved to death. But by sheer strategy, brutality, and charisma, he united the Mongol tribes and launched a conquest that would become the largest land empire in human history. At its peak, the Mongol Empire stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Europe, over 12 million square miles of land, 1/5 of the Earth's surface. His descendants, including Kublai Khan, ruled not only Mongolia, but China, Persia, Eastern Europe, and more. They controlled the Silk Road, taxed global trade routes, and collected tributes from multiple empires. Want to ship goods from Venice to Beijing? You paid the Khans. From oil dynasties to ancient emperors, one thing's clear: money may not buy happiness, but it can buy empires, armies, and influence that shapes history. Which of these families would you want to be born into? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell, because next time we're diving into the most ruthless betrayals in history.